So, very good question actually. So, the suffering, the Buddha mentioned about the suffering, and actually, different person I think experience. Like there's different way of how we learn from suffering, and actually, so basically, as you mentioned, mainly what the Buddha mentioned, that is physical suffering and mental suffering. So for the physical suffering, I think this thing sometimes we cannot deal that much with the physical suffering because like a COVID sometime, you know. So this kind of thing is a effect. Sometimes it's not in our control. We cannot really. Sometimes it's like accidentally, or we don't know when the weather to change, and sometimes we got cough, or maybe accidentally car accident, whatever. But what we can really deal is that the mentality, you know, the mind. That's if we train, you know, and learn how to be master, how to deal with that emotion, because ultimately, even the Buddha himself, he already achieved enlightenment, enlightened, but he sometimes also bodily suffer, you know, physically suffer. You know. That is what we call the physical part. But mentally, we can deal with that, and how to keep our mental to still be healthy. You've seen many like disabled, you know, or like someone who lost their hand, but they have a very healthy mind, you know. Instead of someone they have fully maybe perfect body, but they're living with sorrow. Yeah. You see the difference, this kind of thing, and actually how minds and body, the mental suffering, and physical suffering, you know. And the suffering that's arise, we can learn from, like even the suffering of the physical suffering, you know. And this kind of thing also is a part of the nature, you know, understanding and learn how to accept. But that acceptance is concerned with the mind. You know? So that's why, as you mentioned, that one own experience, when we call suffering, and actually is about the mental states. You know? It's the state of the mind. You know? Sometimes suffering and happiness. If we have the will, you know, the will we call the attitude, we can see the happiness in suffering, you know, and some people can see because the difficulty or suffering in happiness. You know. So as I said, mentioned at the beginning, the two sides, you know, that and actually we can learn from this kind of thing. Suffering sometimes causes happiness to arise. Happiness sometimes causes suffering to arise. You know. So this kind of thing is like up and down. You know, and we can learn and maintain and seeing this kind of thing as a part of the nature of life. You know. That's what we call understanding, we call wisdom. You know. And we can take that learning from suffering. The Buddha mentioned suffering at the beginning of his teaching because it can be observed easier, because we are mostly share that suffering is clearer. You know. But when we are in pleasure time, you know, happy time, we tend to like forget about like this another side of that happiness. So that's why when such a suffering come to them, they feel like it's shock, and they cannot handle what to do. You know, so when we are in happy, awareness through our training and practice allowed us not to be necklace when we are in a happy time. When we have a very difficult time, we also not cling and maybe deep down on that, and we cannot like come back, you know. So this we call awareness and maintain that peace. This wisdom of understanding of suffering allowed us to be able to go on and practice. Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Please.
Thinking about discipline, and in particular, keeping yourself disciplined and when facing a craving or something that might take you outside of that balance. Is there something in a moment that'll help to connect you back away from that, like craving, or that to that balance, and is that balance the same for everyone, or does everyone have their own balance?
That's interesting. There's, I think, different person. Again, so when someone are in maybe facing with the disappointment or sufferings in life, someone recover very quickly. Someone take very long time. Take time maybe for a year, 2 years. Like someone are in depression. So this thing, and actually it depends on many factors. There's like some like not only meditation can really help to recover. It's like meditation is not like all kind of medicine or something like that. But meditation is a part of the practical part. Learning how to, we call awake. We can awake in any situation, in any time. So when one's remember the Gisa Gotami grief, because one, she met the Buddha. It's like a good friend. Sometimes the environment can help. People who we meet, environment and we live, and the sort and many factors. And when we say cause and effects, it's like it's not only one cause and give one effect, but also we call multi-factor that allow oneself, someone or one to recover or come back to the maybe sorrow, or maybe in a very difficult time when they are in suffer. So, and still they can really accept that reality and can live with it, can live and accept that reality. Like when someone loses their hand, for example, at the beginning they're very suffer, I'm disabled, or I no longer have the ability like in normal people, At the beginning, it's maybe can make them to maybe be depression, or even someone they wanted to like committed suicide, So because of that sorrow that take over their mind, and they cannot move on or overcome this. But then actually it's not for one at the beginning they would take that is very personal, and still they realize it, and actually they can do many other things that is helpful for oneself and other. So this kind of we call self-esteem. They come back, then the awareness, the value in oneself will come back. Because this wisdom, sometimes it takes time. Another factor is time. Sometimes we have to learn how to live with that kind of difficult time. It's like we learn from the past. It's like the good lesson. Sometimes it could give a very painful, so the experience. But when it's time pass, because when time pass, everything is like it's going to be a good story, to learn. Some even like can laugh with maybe sometimes they used to be very grieve, and maybe I don't want to live anymore, at that time. But when you have go through it and you look back and you'll find that and actually that is not really a big problem. So because at that time we are covered by those kind of emotion. Take it into personal. When we learn, I think sometimes it takes time, and people who we live with, because the energy. This can help someone. Sometimes can recover quicker. Someone take longer time to recover. But all in all, this kind of thing is whatever phenomena that happen is subject to change. This too shall pass. Everything pass, whether happiness, suffering time, difficult time. This too will pass. So anything that's come to our life, so keep this in mind. Always that can help. Maybe sometimes we have to learn from that lesson, and we can go through it. But everything is not permanent. Even the emotion or the thing or the thought, this is changing all the time. Now, this kind of thing we call understanding. And this understanding helps us to be able to accept the reality and live with it with peace and accept it. Okay.
Last question.
Please.
So I understand that we believe in reincarnation. So when you get to the point of like illumination or like holy spirituality, is there like a point when you stop like coming back to this material world, or like it's just like a circle that will never end? Or like why do we came back to this body full of pleasure when you are already like in your mind like shining earth?
Oh, that is a very good how to say good point of when we talk about the circle of suffering and circles of rebirth. So what is mentioned in according to the teaching of the Buddha, he in the Buddhist belief that it is the reincarnation or rebirth from life to life, and that is circle of suffering that make him to feel like the human beings is like a running, and this point, and actually how can we really share that one life and coming back to this body? And actually in the belief of Buddhism, we are not always come back to this body. Our body is changing all the time. It's like when we talk about rebirth, rather in Buddhism we talk about rebirth rather than reincarnation. The reincarnation is like you come back to this same body, same mind, same person, But in Buddhist term, the mind and the body always changing, even the life after death. Even now we are dying and reborn. If you observe your own mind, feelings, and body, we will see the changing all the time. So not even this building also is not still, it's not like a draft and fishing, And actually everything is changing, the weather, the building, but because the continuation of that changing, we cannot see by our, we don't have that ability, wisdom to see so. So that's still cause us to have, we call misunderstanding of self. That is the source of misunderstanding cause us to continue suffering and creating desire to continue. So what the Buddha shown, point out the way is that when we come back to investigate our minds and body, and actually this mind and body is not really me, or what we understand as a ego or self. So the body is composed of the elements. It's like 4 elements. When these four elements decline, it's like a die, for example. But the other part we call mind or consciousness. The consciousness that we have, like a memory, imagination, perception, and awareness. These we call mental energy, still move on. But just another form of the body. It depends on the quality of the mind, the intention. Like the mind, the quality of the mind is many things. Like the factor that come up with the mind, like anger, like compassion, love and kindness, love and compassion, or the greedy mind, the positive or negative mind. This will leading that energy to form another life. So in the belief of Buddhism is that the mental energy, the energy that move on. So when the mind is, we call the state of mind. The realm of the reincarnation is the state of mind. The human realm is like we have the energy, the quality, the human quality of mind, and we reborn as human beings. Like some have the quality of like a wildlife, like an animal. You know, they're very aggressive and angry. It's like we call the lower, the suffering world, like animals, and many other realm, like animal realm, like ant realm, bird realm. Yeah? So this is the realm of animals. Then also lower in the Buddhist, and the Buddhist believe about the suffering world, like hungry ghost realm, yeah? The monster realm, and hell realm. And then also heaven. It's like a state of mind that's a happy realm. We call it the one who like practice generosity, yeah? Practice the loving kindness. Yeah? This kind of thing will improving the mind quality to reborn in another form of beings. Yeah? This is we call cosmology in Buddhism, about the reincarnation and rebirth. Yeah? So when, again, that is not the end, according to the Buddhist belief, that this life continue, and still we can really get rid of that sort of rebirth. Because whenever there's birth, there's death at the end. Yeah? This is we call it's like a pair. You cannot, like, where there's birth, there is a death at the end. So the Buddha saw this cause, how not to reborn again. That is to achieve nirvana. Yeah? So it's like when one achieves nirvana, there's no more thought to reborn as a being, to reborn as in the circle of suffering. Yeah? We call it peace. Yeah? So that's why when we talk about reincarnation, yeah, it's about the Buddha view that this is the circle of the not ending circle of suffering. Yeah? Mm-hmm.